Hi, I'm Hallie, and welcome to Project Str-Eng. Lots of questions surround the structures in our world, such as who made them, how they made them, and why they made them. And Project Str-Eng is our attempt at finding these answers through understanding structural engineering. In this episode, we're trying to understand rotation, but first, let's talk about history. Way back in the 4th millennium BCE, modern-day Iraq, or back then Lower Mesopotamia, is where the Sumerian people inserted rotating axles into solid discs of wood, inventing the first ever wheel. Icon alert. But the oldest wheel ever discovered was not on a wagon or a white Ferrari, but on a potter's wheel. Though a simple machine, and a sometimes forgotten example of non-vehicular wheels, it's the first instance that anyone realized a spinning disc could be so useful. It's funny thinking about this because there's no exact parallel of a wheel in nature. It's purely a human invention. The wheel itself is a disc, and the pole is called an axle. And many scholars consider it the greatest mechanical insight in the history of humankind. Except there is a major difference between a pottery wheel and the wheels of a wagon. The second one takes way more skill to build. The first wheel set was apparently invented by a mom or a dad, and made of clay and rolled beneath animal figurines. So you guessed it, if they were alive today, they'd be suing Tonka and Hot Wheels for millions. But let's break it down a bit more, y'all. What exactly is a wheel good for, other than when it's made of cheese? Well, at its most basic use, it rotates. Alright, now that we've talked in circles for a bit, I'll pass it off to Peyton with the interview.
Rotation in structural engineering, what does it mean?
Rotation is a movement. It's a particular type of movement. It's a circular movement. It's a circular movement of one object around another object. So let's consider your arm for a moment. You could rotate your finger around your knuckle. You could rotate your hand around your wrist. You could rotate your forearm around your elbow. And each of those is a degree of freedom. It's a form of independent movement which allows it to move around in the world. A good example of this is the International Space Station. Do you know what that is? On top of the International Space Station is something called the Canadarm2. The Canadarm2 replaced the Canadarm, and the Canadarm2 has 7 degrees of freedom, meaning it's an arm on top of the International Space Station that can move independently in 7 different directions. And it does so by rotating. It has 3 different forms of rotation in the shoulder, 1 in the elbow, and 3 in the wrist. So that makes 7 degrees of freedom.
So what do the 3 rotations in the shoulder mean?
It gives it 3 different degrees of freedom to move around in. So if you're in space, you want to be able to reach around the International Space Station, you want to be able to grab someone from space. It can even sever the arm and then move around the International Space Station by lifting one hand and moving around like that.
Buildings and structures don't rotate when they're done being built. So why is it important to learn about rotation in terms of structural engineering and in that context?
If you're in a building, you don't want it to rotate. You don't want it to move at all.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine this building beside us. There's a few different ways that it could move around. It could be pushed to the side, or pushed this way. It could be lifted to the sky, it could be pushed to the ground. Or another option is it could rotate over. And we don't want any of those to happen.
Okay.
Unless you're in the movie Up and you want it to go up.
Yes.
Whenever you consider a structure, you want it to be able to resist any of the loads being acted upon it. Loads can be acted at different spots. For example, if a load was to be acted at the very top of the building, so let's say you got a structure right here, if a force is applied at a certain distance away from the base, you're going to cause a moment. And that moment could cause the structure to rotate. So in structural engineering, that's one of the things we have to consider. We want to stop that building from rotating. Ideally, that building doesn't move at all.
Yes. So does rotation in this regard refer to like ceiling fans and door hinges and things like that?
Absolutely. Rotation is the circular movement of one object around another. Let's consider this thing I have in my pocket.
Wait, I have one too.
No way. This can make a really good fan or a ceiling fan. As we push it around, the end is rotating around the center. I got the opportunity to do a little bit of research on windmills. And so windmills are the rotation of blades, turbines, around the center. And you want to optimize those parameters to make it as strong and efficient as possible while capturing as much energy from the wind. As you spin it, that spins a turbine which can be harnessed for electricity. Okay. You want to optimize the parameters to capture the most amount of wind as possible so you can get the most energy you can from the wind, such as the length of the blade, you can consider the density of the blade, you consider the width and the height, you can consider the Young's modulus, you can consider all sorts of different parameters which can be optimized to make it the most efficient possible. Cheers.
That looks scrumdiddlyumptious, guys. So basically, rotation, or rotational motion, is a circular movement of an an object or structure around a fixed axis, known as the axis of rotation. Rotation is the angle made by the tangent, drawn on the deflected shape of the structure to the original axis of the member, and measured in degrees or radians. Engineers know all about rotation in all its different forms, from rotation in supports and connections between structural elements, to rotation of foundations and even entire structures. Does your brain feel bigger after this? I know mine does. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to smash that like and subscribe button on your way out, and as always, enjoy the process.